How's it going, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. It's me, your host, your guy, Stavros, Katsantonis, Stavi, whatever you guys want to call me makes it easiest to pronounce that tough name that I've struggled with my entire life. That's okay. I wanted to welcome you guys back because today we're going to have an awesome video lined up. As you guys saw in the title, it is going to be on the CFL, Canadian football. I know a lot of my American friends or American people that are watching this have no idea what Canadian football is. So that's what I'm bringing this YouTube video to you today, so you guys can learn a bit about the CFL game, the history. Even if you're interested in trying to get to the CFL, you know, maybe you're a young athlete out there that wants to know, man, how can I get to the CFL or play professional football in Canada? How is that possible? Well, I'm here to tell you exactly how to do that, tell you what CFL football is all about, and why it's such a great game today. So let's dive into it. Let's dive into the rules, y'all. So starting off, the bare basics, okay? There's 9 CFL teams, right? So you got 5 in the West, 4 in the East. You have, so we'll start West East. So you have the BC Lions, the Calgary Stampeders, the Edmonton Eskimos, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now heading on over to the Eastern Conference, right? We just mentioned the Western Conference teams just now, those 5. Now we're going to go into the Eastern Conference, which makes up the Toronto Argonauts, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the Montreal Alouettes, and the Ottawa Red Blacks in our nation's capital, Ottawa. Amazing city. But the best city is obviously Hamilton, because that's who your boy plays for, Hamilton Tiger Cats. That's my team. That's my squad, and I'm always going to rep them. So those are your 9 CFL teams right there, okay? So to break down to the start of the game, there are 12 players on the field on each side of the ball, okay? So you're going to have 12 offense, 12 defense. Usually, you guys are used to, any of my American football players out there, you guys are used to 11 on 11. So you guys are probably thinking, where in the heck does that extra guy come from on each side of the ball? So usually, most teams use it. Usually there's an extra receiver and an extra defensive back. So it doesn't really throw a whole lot of a wrench into it when we get down to like the field dimension and stuff, which we're going to get to. So usually it's a defensive back, right? Most defenses are either a 40 front or a 30 front, which means, those of you that don't know, 3 down linemen or 4 down linemen with 3 linebackers. And then you have your DBs in the back there. You're going to have a boundary half, boundary corner, your free safety, a field half, a field corner, and sometimes some teams, depending on what your front is, you might run with a rover, you know, as an extra cover guy. But that's all more intricate part of the game. Moving on from that, on the 12 people, you are going to see a much wider field than you're going to see in the NFL. So we're going to take a look at the CFL field dimensions. We'd start off with 110-yard long field. That's end zone to end zone, everybody. It's super crazy. It's super long. And you thought that was crazy, right? A long football field with the 55-yard line being the center line. Take a look at the width. The width is going to be 65 yards wide, guys. So I'll put up the dimensions of a regular American field right next to it so you can see just how much bigger the CFL field is and why there is an extra player now, why that's going to make the field a little bit, I guess, smaller, but it's still super wide. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's an interesting game. Another crazy thing that you're going to see in the line of scrimmage, right? So usually in the NFL, you're seeing guys' helmets are like right on top of each other, right? The defensive lineman on the O-lineman and the corners when they're in press coverage on the receiver. But the difference here, now the defenders have to give 1 full yard to the opposing line of scrimmage. So if you cross that line, you're going to get a neutral zone infraction, a penalty, offsides, whatever you want to call it. So you have to be 1 yard off of either the offensive lineman or the wide receiver during the entire game. All right, you can never cross that line or else you'll get a penalty. So that's one of the cool things to it. It's now you can't, your press coverage is a yard off, so it's a little bit tougher. It also is the same for these D linemen. It's a yard off, so it's a 3rd and 1, right? You're going to see a lot of teams get under center and just bulldoze through to get that first down. And you guys just heard me say 3rd and 1, right? That's also going to be a difference changer in the CFL, Canadian rules football. 3 down football, okay? So that means 1, 2, 3. You're punting on 3rd down, okay? Still 10 yards to get a first down, but you got 1 less down now. So maybe that's where the trade-off is. You get an extra player, but you get 1 less down. So that is one of the most challenging things. Like I said, you'll see a lot of teams go for it on 3rd and 1, 3rd and inches because they have that extra yard off the ball that the defensive line has to give. So that's a huge implication there, that 1 yard off. Going into more kind of yardage off type of things. There's also a 5-yard halo on punt returns, sometimes on a kickoff return, things like that. So you have to give the punt returner, while he's catching it, just before he catches it and right when he catches it, you have to give him 5 yards. So everyone has to be 5 yards away from him to let him catch it. So that allows more punt returns to be fielded. There's no fair catches or anything like that. But it also protects the return a little bit, so some guy can't just run down there and bulldoze, his whole body out off the ground and all that stuff. So that 5-yard halo, if you're inside that 5-yard halo, these referees are watching it, you will get a penalty. So that's another interesting thing about the CFL game. Another one on the rule side, we're going to go into the rouge. The rouge, y'all. Y'all are probably like, Stav, I didn't know you spoke French. I don't speak French. The rouge is a single point in Canadian football. Yes, you can score 1-pointers in the CFL, Canadian football, college, all that good stuff. And how that works is, right, in the CFL, I forgot to mention this too. Obviously, you guys saw on that little diagram, the CFL field, the end zones are 20 yards long from goal line to the back of the end zone. So on a field goal, not a PAT, field goal, punt, any time that a ball is kicked, not through the uprights, but bounces back out of the back of the end zone or the sides of the end zones, that results in 1 point for the team who kicked it through there. So it's another strategy. Maybe you're down 1 point, game's on the line. You're not sure about your field goal kicker, or if he misses it, the guy's got to get it out of there. So maybe you're going up for a field goal and to win the game, down 1, and the kicker misses it, but it goes out the back of the end zone. Well, that's 1 point. You just tied the game. So that's another big thing. A lot of teams put a returner back there whenever a field goal is happening, to return it out of the end zone so they don't have to give up a point. Sometimes they will give up a point so they can get it, I believe, at the 35-yard line. But it just all comes down to strategy, right? Do you want to give up a point? Same thing, a lot of teams give up a safety when they're punting deep in their own end, just to flip the field, right? Because instead of having a punt that's only going to get to, about the halfway line, it might be better off just giving up 2 points and having it restart on the other opponent's 35-yard line. So another interesting thing, the ruse there. Also, you're going to see the waggle in the CFL and Canadian rules football. What the waggle is basically, I'm pretty sure these are the exact rules. I could be wrong here, so don't quote me. But 3 receivers at any given time can be moving vertically, right? Vertically at the snap or before the snap of the ball. So that usually a lot of receivers get a head start, right? So they're about 10 yards off the ball. You'll see CFL receivers 10 yards off the ball. And then you'll see the QBs give one of these, like they'll swiggle their fingers or they'll push all their guys forward, just kind of give them a little motion signal. And they'll take a run at it. And usually right when they get to that line of scrimmage, the ball is snapped and they're already at, top speed. And you're having these DBs that are out there having to cover that. Okay, so that's one of the most challenging things that you'll ever see in Canadian football versus the NFL is having to cover guys that are using the waggle. It's so crazy. You got guys that are running 4.4, 4.2s, and they're getting a 10-yard head start, while as a DB, you're sitting there literally just having to absorb them or run with them. So that's going to be the waggle that you're going to see in the Canadian Football League, as well as the college level as well. So moving on from that, there is the 3-minute warning, right? Canada has to be just a little bit different than the United States. So they have the 3-minute warning before halftime and at the end of the game. 3-minute warning, the clock will stop. Another cool thing, there is pass interference replay. So I know everyone in the NFL has a problem every year about, that should have been pass interference. That wasn't pass interference. We need a replay. The coaches are actually allowed to challenge replays on the field if they feel that someone may have been interfered with. I know the NFL is starting to utilize it a little bit, but there are some intricacies with the NFL on when exactly it's pass interference or holding, right? We've seen that a few times this season. But in the CFL, you challenge it. Anytime when the receiver's been interfered with, he could have been on the other side of the field. They can review it and they can overturn it, and you can get a first down just like that. That's one of the crazy things about Canadian rules football. Now, moving a little bit into the roster, I know a lot of people want to know, okay, well, how many people are on the CFL rosters? There is a ratio for most of you that don't know. That means there has to be a certain amount of Canadians and a certain amount of Americans on the roster. And just recently, they added in a certain amount of global international players, outside of the United States and Canada that have to be on the roster. So currently for this year, the active roster is set at 45 total people. Okay, so there is only 45 people that make the active roster and that get to travel to away games and things like that and dress for games. So out of those 45, At the maximum, 20 of those have to be American-born players or Americans that are up there, signed to teams. Next, so now we just took those 20 away. 2 of those players can be quarterbacks. The quarterbacks do not count towards the ratio, which is a very interesting thing. A quarterback can be Canadian or American, and he'll never count towards the ratio. So now teams can only carry 2 quarterbacks starting this year. I think last year it was 3. 2 quarterbacks on the active roster. Now moving into the Canadians, the bread and butter that keeps the CFL going. The national players. So we'll get more into what a national player is and exactly how you can become one. Some people probably want to know how you can, be a national player. But national players are those that are Canadian citizens, people who have lived in Canada, I think, for 5 years or more before they're 18. There's some rules. We'll get to them at the end. But there has to be 21 Canadians on the active roster, and then there has to be 2 global players that have to be on the roster too. So those rules, the global players just came in, I think, about 2.5-3 years ago, where we started implementing global players into the roster, which is another cool thing, growing the game, to outside of the borders of just U.S. and Canada. We got guys from Mexico, Germany, all these cool things where we got different players from different countries coming in, France. So it's pretty an awesome thing. Now, on the field, at any given moment, this is offense and defense combined, there must be 10 national starters out of the 22 starters. Okay, so usually before the games, there's a depth chart that's given to, I believe, the referee that's responsible for, managing the national and globals and American players that are on the field. There has to be 10 out of the 22. So 10 nationals must be on the field. 10 Canadians have to be playing on either offense or defense in any given time. Out of those 10, 3 can be Americans that have spent at least 3 consecutive seasons with the CFL team, or they've been in the CFL for 4 years minimum. So 3 of those 10, right, can be American guys that have either played in the CFL for 3 consecutive years with the same team or 4 years in the CFL. So that's another interesting thing. So now that kind of brings that number down to 7. So really, there's really only 7 Canadians minimum that have to be on the field at each time, depending on which it's all going to be depending on who that team has, and what positions, where they're putting their Canadians. Maybe they do start 10 national Canadians, or maybe they just have an American guy that's been there for a while that can qualify as that national position. So it's kind of a little chess game there in terms of where they're going to put someone. So those are going to be kind of your basic rules to the CFL. There's probably a bunch that I'm still missing. I'm still new, right? I've only been playing the CFL game, or Canadian football game, since about 2015. So I'm about 5 years into it. There's still a lot, always good stuff to learn. But even coming up from, the United States, playing American football my whole high school career and youth football career, it was such a struggle for me getting used to at first. But, once you get the hang of it, football is football at the end of the day. You just got to learn the new intricacies of the game, and you just start playing. So moving now into the history of the CFL. As much as people don't know about the CFL is actually very, very seasoned, okay? The inaugural season of the CFL started in 1958, and you guys are like, okay, well, that's not that old. Take this in for a second. The Grey Cup, right? That's the trophy that's given out each year. It's the equivalent of the Lombardi Trophy, the Super Bowl. The Grey Cup had its first inaugural game in 1909, which would make this year, I believe, the 109th Grey Cup, which is to be played in the host city, my city, Hamilton, which is a pretty cool thing that's happening this year. But yeah, Grey Cup, 1909, super old. There is an 18-game season in the CFL, so you'll play 18 games, I think, with 3 bye weeks. And then I believe there's 3 playoff games, semifinal, divisional, or there might be 2 playoff games, and then the Grey Cup, 2 or 3. That's another thing that I'm learning, but you get me at 18. I got to focus on game 1 first. So, if you guys want to look up the specifics of playoffs, you can do that as well. Now, it is actually the 108th. Sorry, let me make that correction. It'll be the 108th Grey Cup in Hamilton this year. Obviously, it would have been the 109th this year if the season didn't get canceled due to COVID last year, but we're moving forward. So, the Hamilton Football Club, okay? That's the original team. They later became the Hamilton Tigrats. They formed on November 3rd, 1869, okay? we're talking a long time, over 130 years of football. If my math is correct, it might be wrong, might be even more than that. The Hamilton Club was, not the original team. They're not the first team. The oldest team is the Toronto Argonauts. Okay, they were officially the Toronto Argonauts. They were formed in 1873, right? It was originally you guys think, 1869 was the Hamilton Football Club, but they eventually became the Tiger Cats. But the Toronto Argonauts started out in 1873 officially. Now, moving into the most notable players, I just kind of grabbed a few, just that had some cool history to them that I thought would be good to share. I think they're all all these guys that I'm about to mention are on the top 50 list by TSN, which is Canada's ESPN. So the most notable players I kind of got no particular order for me personally. I just kind of wrote them out as I read them off. Doug Flutie. Most of you guys know Doug Flutie, Boston College. He played for a few different CFL teams, the Argos, and also went on to play in the NFL for the Chargers, Patriots, Buffalo Bills. I mean, that guy's Hall of Famer. Everyone knows about him. Moving on, we got Warren Moon. Started out with the Edmonton Eskimos. Big, Pro Football Hall of Fame guy. Played for, I believe, the Vikings, the Houston Oilers, just to say the least. I think the Chiefs too, and the Seahawks. Those are the teams that he played for. So, awesome quarterback. I actually was able to meet him in my first year at the University of British Columbia. He came out to one of our practices and just, motivational speaker. Gave us some good points to, take on in our life, and very awesome guy to meet. Obviously, an awesome football player. Now, moving on, we got Russ Jackson. All the Canadians are going to know this guy. He's one of the most famous Canadian football players to ever play the game. Russ Jackson, I believe, I don't have it written in front of me, but I believe he played for the Ottawa Renegades or Rough Riders, what they used to be called. I could be totally wrong on that, so I might even edit that out. But if I'm not, there you go. Moving on, we got George Reed. George Reed is from Mississippi. Was a running back, set crazy amount of records before. I mean, the rushing records he set were crazy. I think they were in the tens of thousands range. And I think he had 134 rushing touchdowns. And that was before Emmitt Smith came in. Obviously he did that in the NFL, but hey, 134 touchdowns in any league, that's pretty crazy. Okay. So that's George Reed for you. The last person I got on my list here, we're going to have Normie Kwong. And the reason I chose Normie, he just kind of stuck out to me on the list, and I thought, let's just click on it, see some of his stats and stuff like that. Normie was the first Chinese football player in the CFL. He's also a politician, awesome guy, an awesome football player, paved the way. I think he's only about 5'6", 170 pounds, but was a crazy fullback, rushed for 9,000 yards or 10,000 yards, something like that. Awesome player. Played a long time in the CFL, great guy. That's just one of the guys that I picked out of there as well. So that's going to be your history. There's tons of other history out there. Maybe we'll make another video on some CFL history, show some CFL highlights, things like that. If you guys want that, let me know down in the comment section below, and we can get a video like that going. Now, moving on to some of my miscellaneous / how to play. There are probably a lot of people that are watching this and wanting to know, okay, well, how can I make it to the CFL? How do I do it, Stav? What do I need to do to get there? So these are just a few things. Starting off with kind of the miscellaneous stuff. A lot of people want to know, how much money do CFL players make? The minimum salary is 65,000 Canadian, and we can make a whole separate video on that because there are some intricate things that a lot of people don't know, like being a practice roster guy, and dressing games and what you actually get paid. So maybe we'll make another video like that, maybe if not now, maybe at the end of the season. That way when I see the paychecks and how they come in, we can go over that too. But it'll be 65K, and that's Canadian. Okay, so there is going to be a little bit of a difference when the American players bring it back to the United States, and the taxes and all that. Like I said, that's a whole separate video. Now, going into national players, right, the Canadian players, national players sign a minimum 3-year contract, with the final year being an option year. So this is usually for any new national players, like draft eligible players. So the CFL draft is strictly for national players. So each year the CFL drafts, the top Canadians in the draft class, whether they're NCAA guys or U Sport, which is the Canadian College League, which I can make another video on about U Sports and how all that works. Another interesting thing. And that's every year nationals are picked from there. They have to sign minimum 3-year with an option. The option, which is in the final year, the 3rd year, is basically the team deciding whether or not they want to keep you. So it's their option, not yours. I actually learned that, just recently. I didn't quite understand what that meant. But essentially it's if you do 2 good years, all right, the team's going to, sign you back to an option. And then you'll, after that third year, you become a free agent. Maybe they'll re-sign you, or you go on the open market. So that's what it is for national. For American players, they sign 2-year minimum contracts, or maximum, however you want to call it. I've never seen anyone sign more than that. But 2-year contracts, with the second year being the option. So you're going to play 1 year. If you do good, your team's more than likely going to extend your option. If you do bad, they'll probably cut you or release you. You know, it's a cutthroat, it's a business, so that could possibly happen as well. Now, the same for the Globals. The Globals are also a 3-year contract, guys, 2-year plus an option year. So just so you guys know that. And even if you are a global guy, maybe you're watching this and you're living in Mexico, or you're living in Europe somewhere, or Asia somewhere, and you want to play, you're trying to play professional football. You know, try to reach out to me. I can leave a list of, you know, how to find agents that represent, you know, CFL players that are registered CFLPA agents. And you guys can message him, send him your film, and who knows, you know, maybe you can get into a combine or something like that. I know the CFL holds combines globally, you know, in Europe and stuff like that. So maybe this is for you out there if you're watching it, global guys. So moving on from there, this is what national players are. So national players are basically, starting off, right, any Canadian citizen. So if you're born in Canada, or before 2009, like myself, if you're born to a Canadian citizen, even though I wasn't born in Canada, but I was born in the United States, as my dad was Canadian, and I received citizenship through him. After 2009, I'm pretty sure they went away with that. You have to be born in Canada to become a citizen, or you know, apply through the naturalization processes, you know, via visas and permits and all that other crazy stuff that you're going to have to go to Government Canada to figure out. So other than that, a player who is physically resident in Canada for an aggregate period of 5 years prior to the age of 18, they are considered nationals, even if you don't have a passport in Canada. An American or global player who is draft eligible no earlier than the 2021 draft and has played for a minimum of 3 years at a U Sport institution and has graduated with a degree at that institution. So that's another interesting thing, guys. So for anybody that's out there that is attending a U Sport, you know, institution, or if you're an American and you want to attend a U Sport institution, this is kind of a cool thing. If you go there for 3 years and get your degree from that school, you now qualify as a national and you can be drafted. So that's just something to keep an eye out, right? Most American people who are going to Canada, they're going to be taking the American dollar, so it's going to be a little bit cheaper for school. They're still going to have to pay those international rates, which might, you know, be a little bit cheaper than your in-state tuition or even out-of-state tuition if you're going to Canada. And you're getting great educations. You know, some of the Canadian schools, it's not some, but almost all of them, have some of the top, you know, academics in the world, right? I went to UBC. It was a top 30 academic institution in the world. You got McGill, Queens. I'm probably missing a ton. I don't really know Ontario that well in terms of the schools, but I just know there's a few good ones out there, or there's a lot of good ones out there. So shoot, if you're an American guy and you're a fringe D3, D2 guy, not getting any D1 looks, I'd highly suggest reaching out to some recruiting coordinators in Canada. If you want help with that, let me know in the comment section. I can help you with that. I know a lot of Canadian college coaches, and you know, have made a lot of connections over the years of playing, and will only continue to make connections. So take advantage of that. Go to a Canadian institution, get your degree, or transfer to one, get your degree, play there for 3 years, and now boom, you're eligible for the CFL draft. You're going to be considered a national, and that's the most valuable thing in the CFL, is to be a national. A lot of people overlook that, but to be a Canadian citizen or a Canadian national, counting towards the ratio, that's a huge thing, and it's a big deal. You're not as expendable as an American player who, not that this has anything against American players, but it's the Canadian Football League, and those ratios that they have to meet, right? The Canadian players, it kind of benefits you to be a Canadian in terms of even tax purposes as well. So if you can get your citizenship, that's number one. Moving on from that, it says a player classified as a national player prior to May 21st, 2019. And those are kind of the rules right there. So, you know, if you want to try to become a national or be considered as a national for the Canadian draft, you know, and you're watching this and you're in high school or youth football, or even you're in college right now and you have 3 years left and you're like, okay, well, I still want to play pro football. I just have to, we all have our different paths, so hit me up. I can help you out. And I really enjoyed sharing this video with you guys today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, ring the post notifications bell so you guys can see all my latest videos and when they come live. Leave me a comment if you guys have any questions. This channel is definitely dedicated to helping out football players, whether you're Canadian, American, European, Asian, anyone. I'm open to helping anybody, reach their goals of being a professional athlete, or even just a collegiate athlete, or just an athlete in general. I know a lot about the game and stuff like that, so I'd love to help out in any way that I can. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.